Welcome to Ferment Radio, a podcast series on bacterial and social fermentation. Fermentation can incite social actions, spark creativity, and bring surprising new tastes to our lives. My name is Anya Muangkote, and I invite you to join us in a conversation on living interconnectivities, from macro to micro, from societal to cellular, and from global to personal. Cyanobacteria have many names. As the first photosynthetic organisms, they are responsible for the evolution of life on this planet. Aztecs called them tecuitlatl, and it was an important part of their diet until the fall of Tenochtitlan in the 16th century and the subsequent draining of the Texcoco Lake upon which Mexico City was built. Cyanobacteria are also known as blue-green algae, which form mats on the water surface and produce toxins that are harmful to humans and aquatic life. We also commonly know them as spirulina, a fashionable superfood and a new champion of green capitalism. Spirulina is also considered to be an important future element in a space cruise diet. Back on Earth, food production is one of the major drivers of global environmental change. However, spirulina can become a game changer, since it requires much less water and land to produce the same amount of protein energy as livestock. Let's now listen to Anya Muangkote, a multidisciplinary designer and researcher born and raised in Bangkok. Her actions to make fresh spirulina accessible to everyone have great potential to introduce a spirulina-based diet into our daily lives.
I wonder if you remember, when did you learn about spirulina for the first time? Do you remember that moment?
Very clearly. I first found out all the amazing things about spirulina when I was working on a speculative project, which started off over a year ago, around the end of 2019, when I was in the second year of my master's at the Royal College of Art. And Spirulina Society is basically a sequel of this project, which is called International Year of Self-Sustenance 2035. And yeah, to give you a little bit of background, I was in a design pathway called Design Futures, in which it encourages students to imagine, build, and critique possible futures, basically. It also encourages wild speculation alongside research. So the name of the design pathway itself is quite self-explanatory. And this was actually the first time I adopted this kind of approach to my project. So all of my work recently is under the theme of finding alternatives to the conventional things like, that are making the climate crisis worse, from things like petrochemical-based kind of materials to the food systems. And for this one, I was looking at a sustainable way to produce food. I gathered information about meat alternatives like cultured meat produced in the lab or insect farms, etc. Because, food production is one of the major drivers of global environmental change. And among these alternatives, spirulina really stood out for me for various reasons. Apart from its health benefits for being a superfood that contains all the amino acids and minerals, just like meat, I was intrigued by its efficiency because it uses very little water and space, 100 to 200 times less than meat production. It can also be grown indoors without, fancy equipment. So I love the fact that it's cost effective, and also its ability to grow so fast that you could actually harvest it every day under the optimal conditions is very, very attractive to me personally. the fact that it's backed by the United Nations and World Health Organization, and NASA also conducted research on spirulina as an edible alga for spacecraft crew. You can feed spirulina with your own urine. And yeah, it struck me. I think the moment I found out about this fact, I think my instant reaction was, okay, I am sold. Because this is very much close to the ideal ways of fostering sustainability because of circularity, and you can really keep things in a loop. And of course, you'll need something to collect the urine. And yeah, I just realized that a beautiful urinal vessel made from glass was actually a thing in the old days. And I think some of the designs looked actually really fancy, as if they were decorative objects. And I was really inspired by the idea of bringing back this obsolete artifact to modern times. And then I thought, who would be the early adopters for this? Definitely someone who cares about the sustainability and climate emergency. And ideally, to have a real impact on a global scale, these people have to be part of social movement somehow. And I was inspired by Extinction Rebellion, basically. So I came up with a fictional movement called Spirulina movement. The name is, of course, derived from the words spirulina and urinal. While most people might think that the idea of using urine as fertilizer is disgusting, basically, I find it very resourceful and appealing.
Could you tell us a bit more why do we need urine to grow spirulina?
Definitely. So spirulina grows by performing photosynthesis. And obviously, the most vital things are lights and its food or nutrients, which comprise mainly nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, which very similar to vegetable fertilizers. I mean, human urine happens to have a very similar ratio of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus to vegetable fertilizer. So when you grow spirulina, you need a culture medium. And it's basically these nutrients mixed with water, like spring water, filtered water, because of the chlorine content. You need to filter it out, and then you kind of dilute live spirulina culture into the medium, and then it grows in the liquid, basically in a water. So it's basically urine is a substitution of the synthetic vegetable fertilizer. It's spirulina food, basically.
Did you try to grow it with urine yourself, or it's just a prototype for now?
It's just a prototype for now because, unfortunately, it's quite difficult to find the right balance, and I haven't been able to perfect this myself. I'm still using the culture medium provided by a company that sells live culture, because the amount of nitrogen and other elements will differ depending on your diet. For example, if you're vegan or drinking loads or a lot of water, then your urine will be less concentrated, and it's tricky to measure the exact amount. And since I started working on Spirulina Society, I haven't really got a chance to dive into this urine experimentation because it's not my main focus. Well, at least not yet. I only tried several times and the culture was imbalanced, and I suspect that I just simply mixed the wrong amount of various ingredients. But anyway, I'm definitely going to start experimenting with urine again soon.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. But since you've mentioned Spirulina Society, I would be curious to hear more about that part of your activities.
When I finished the speculative project that I mentioned to you about the urine and everything, I thought, now that I've explored the future, I've got to move back to the present time and think of how I can work towards that kind of ideal and desirable future. And yes, Spirulina Society came along after that project as my graduation project, because I really wanted to make spirulina cultivation as a thing for real. So yeah, it's going to have to take a different kind of approach, because sadly, if I mention about the urine thing, the urine bit to people in general without, inviting them into the conversation and raise an awareness first, it's just going to drive people away because, I'm very much aware that people in general would be like, thanks, but no thanks. So I've got to be patient and see whenever it's the right time for me to bring it up. And I think encouraging people to start growing spirulina at home is such a big task already. I guess it's got to be one step at a time.
For me, what is very powerful in your project on spirulina is that you open source your knowledge, but also design models to kind of encourage people for growing spirulina. I had like negative experiences with growing spirulina at home. I found it like super confusing. I didn't know which kind of advices to follow. There are so many different ways, so many different approaches. And suddenly on your webpage, when I found it, I was like, yeah, clear way to do it. And could you tell us, in short, how do we grow spirulina at home? What are the basic steps to take in order to go for it?
Telling you briefly is, I think, it's the hardest questions that I've got today because I don't think there's no such thing as like a brief kind of. But I'll try. I'll try.
I wonder what are like the common mistakes, like something you should be really careful for, like, I don't know, light or...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm going to touch on that. So I think the process of cultivating spirulina, I think to begin with, before getting hands-on, I think the first thing you need to do is to get to know spirulina better in terms of its nature and behavior. What does it need to survive? What kind of things to look out for? What are the indications of its wellness or illness even? And how frequently should you clean or change the culture medium, etc.? So the first thing is the light intensity. It plays an important role in its growth. The more, the better. For example, if you put the cultivation vessels near a window, you'll get, adequate amount of light from the sun during the day. But then lack of sunlight can also be compensated by using artificial light. So it's just like the common light bulb that you can find, or the one that you're using, your lamp, basically, to enhance the process of photosynthesis in the daytime. Spirulina also likes the warm weather. The optimal temperature is like 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. So growing spirulina in Bangkok is actually better than in London because you don't need a heater to reach the optimal growth condition. But just pointing out that when I was in London, I tried growing both with and without using a heater, and my room temperature was around 22 to 25 degrees, and it was fine. Perhaps it grows slightly slower than when it's warmer, but I don't think you'll notice the difference. And if you're not in a rush, you don't need a heater at all, and it's better because less energy consumption. And the agitation is really crucial as well. Apart from the lights, you need to create the agitation because it can help to avoid cell sedimentation like clumping and dead zones. It can also create optimized light and dark cycle that can enhance photosynthesis. But then just to look out for excessive aeration may produce cell damage. So you need to adjust the pressure properly. So yeah, I try to demonstrate by using the video because it's really hard to tell on like in the text. Because you have to like look out for the right kind of pressure, but it's not going to be too hard for that. For example, sometimes or quite often spirulina would sink to the bottom of a container. Most of the time it's considered normal because it could be that the weather is too cold. So the culture would clump together and form a dark green mass at the bottom, and most people are freaking out. I myself, actually, at first I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with my spirulina? And yeah, just remember this is fine. However, this could also mean that the culture medium is imbalanced. And this is not great because if you leave it for too long, the culture could die, and that is not ideal. And another one would be, well, this is purely my assumption, and this is not backed by any research or articles. So when spirulina sinks to the bottom, it could also mean that it's been a productive day for spirulina because it's been exposed to a substantial amount of light throughout the day. I'm saying this because I usually notice thousands of tiny bubbles appear suddenly after stirring the culture, and that is an oxygen release from photosynthesis, basically. So this is a good sign. So I wonder if spirulina is just exhausted and just want to rest and do nothing, you know. So it kind of depends, really. But I think the most important thing to get to know is color. So if it goes yellowish or olive green kind of shade, it's not healthy. But if it's blue green kind of hue, it's really healthy. And you can notice from the smell as well, because normally you don't really smell anything apart from like a little bit of salty kind of, you know, like the sea salt kind of breeze. I don't know, but it doesn't really smell funky at all. So if it smells weird, you'll know that, yeah, something's wrong, and don't consume it.
I wonder about the 3D open source designs you feature on your project webpage. Where this idea came from? Did you feel like you couldn't find like a proper kind of tools to use, and therefore you came with your own? Or because I found it super useful when I was trying to grow spirulina by myself. Yeah, it's quite hard to find like, you know, vessels which would fit to each other, and, you know, good position for the light and so on.
Have you got my design in your room though? Did you print it out?
No, not yet, but I am planning to do it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So I think the idea of open sourcing is I want it to grow, and also I really want to share it with people, because raw spirulina is exclusive, because it's either not commercially available or really expensive. And the purpose of open sourcing the knowledge and cultivation tools is to, you know, create an invitation in order to make spirulina cultivation accessible to the public. And I also want to encourage people to source everything locally and guide them towards a sustainable lifestyle. So I think open source kind of culture contributes to empowerment directly, and that can lead to, you know, people gaining greater agency, as in the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make their own free choices. I also think open sourcing knowledge is very powerful, and I really admire people who are doing that on a daily basis. I really like the sense of community where everyone shares their insight, helping each other. And I think it's time for me to give back or contribute somehow, because I've learned so much from these amazing people. And free education is essentially the best, and I'm grateful for that. Because education is key to bringing about radical changes, because in order to shift towards something completely different, you have to understand the principles and the fundamentals, and to be able to look at a bigger picture as well as a smaller picture all at the same time. And you also need collective actions, and to be able to stick to those actions, you need consistency. Anyway, what I'm saying that it's going to be extremely difficult to bring about changes without knowledge and support from the community. And I find that the open source community is certainly a catalyst for that.
Since we have here just, you know, like a sound, it's an audio experience and just a conversation. I wanted to ask you about the taste of fresh spirulina. How does it taste?
Well, it has no taste. I don't know if if that's going to put people off, but weirdly, yeah, it has no taste or smell, but it has texture. I don't know if you tried it before.
Yeah, that's true. I think that your designs for 3D printing, for like supporting DIY growing spirulina at home, are also very aesthetic. I think it's something, you know, you do not try to hide in the corner of your room. It can be even decorative object almost. And I would like to invite you to describe to our listeners how those objects look.
The design actually is like a lid um, that covers the glass container. So I use like mainly vases, like decorative vases that you can find locally. It's actually like a lampshade. It has like a hole where you can fit, a bulb holder, basic one that you can find anywhere. And then you just screw the light in. And then when you turn on the light, it's kind of like glowing. I don't want people to look at this as, oh, this is a lab or something. I kind of want it to blend in your domestic space. So it's basically like a lamp on the top of glass containers, and underneath it's just spirulina. And the design derived from the architecture of the Aztecs, actually, because they believe that the Aztecs were the original who started cultivating spirulina since forever ago. And the color is kind of like resembles concrete, but also resembles spirulina, since I use PLA filaments, which is a bioplastic derived from cornstarch or plant-based materials. So you can pick various color. The good thing about this is that you can customize it, basically, so you can get any color that you want. And the popular one, though, I think it's yellow, because it gives you like an ambient kind of feeling to your room.
Just before recording, we were chatting about like how would you identify yourself if you are more of a designer or artist or architect. We ended up with that maybe you are like an interdisciplinary designer, multidisciplinary, exactly. And I also read on your webpage that you are very much interested to use design for like an age of a crisis and to provoke like a change or positive change. What change do you want? What are you aiming at? What would you be hoping for? What kind of a change?
Wow, everything, actually. So yeah, I think you kind of like sense the theme of my design. Recently, I've been focusing on radical design and systemic design, and like responsible ones that promote awareness, and whether it be socio-political issues or environmental issues, and it focuses on circularity and locality. I like my design to be able to demonstrate how it would affect things on a global scale, and perhaps the consequences, like both positive and negative ones. The design should ask fundamental questions like where do materials come from? How do you sustainably source things? What happens to the things you consumed? Can it be recycled or stay in a loop? And yeah, I hope my work is the embodiment of the things I just mentioned. I don't think it's going to be easy at all, but I hope my work could make an impact somehow. I hope it could empower people to challenge the current modes of production and consumption.
I have several comments on the things also you said before. First of all, when you said that this project about growing spirulina with urine was the first one before Spirulina Society, I got surprised because I thought it was exactly the other way around, that you kind of start shyly or like more, not maybe shyly, but down to earth. And then you kind of think of the future. So I like that surprise. Yeah, it's very interesting with this urine and growing spirulina this way. I never heard of it before. I've heard about hydroponics. And I think they were also doing experiments with nourishing the plants with urine. It's quite obvious that you can do the same with spirulina, because spirulina is kind of the old relative of plants, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it totally makes sense.
I think it's a hybrid because spirulina is actually a cyanobacteria. So it's a hybrid of bacteria and plants, basically. So it has ability to photosynthesis. And I think if you're using photosynthesis as a form of, breaking down energy, then you'll need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So NPK is quite common in every organisms or microorganisms.
I also didn't know that the design of those hats or shades for lampshades for the bioreactors for growing spirulina are inspired by Aztecs. That's such a fantastic idea. Are you still growing spirulina out there where you are?
Definitely. I had to start everything from scratch, try to source everything near my home. But I have to admit to you, sometimes, you can't find specific equipment. So I had to order online, which is quite bad. But I mean, if you use for quite a while, not just like single use, I think it's fine. You just need to compromise on things. But yeah, I'm going to grow spirulina for exhibition in May. It's for Bangkok Design Week, and hopefully after that I can invite people to have discussion about urine, maybe, perhaps. So yeah, it's going to be exciting, and yeah, I plan to run several workshops as well. So yeah.
Well, there is no universal design. It always depends where you are applying it, where in the world, which conditions are there.
Some people, for example, now I'm in Thailand, I might not need like a lamp because the sunlight is very strong. So I don't need to use the lamp at all. Open sourcing is quite challenging for me because I want to make things accessible for everyone and everywhere, and that's quite impossible, right? Because no one size fits all in a sense. So the design has to adjust somehow depending on where you are. So I'm trying to cover that. So it takes time, but hopefully I can give the constant update, because I don't see Spirulina Society as the finished project ever. It has to be constantly updating.
Are you interested in growing spirulina by yourself? If so, definitely check out Anya's Spirulina Society project at spirulinasociety.org. The website includes very easy tutorials on how to start, harvest, and maintain healthy and fresh spirulina. You will also find 3D designs to download and build your equipment to grow spirulina at home. If you would like to know more about the show, listen to this episode again, or find previous episodes, please go to fermentradio.com. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. I'm always looking forward to hearing from you at hello@fermentradio.com. Ferment Radio is brought to you by Culture of Cultures and is produced by Super Eclectic. Thank you for listening. Keep fermenting and stay tuned for the next episode of Ferment Radio.